Nebraska's native bees. All right, so the importance of bees. So pollination services are done by bees, and their pollination services done by bees are valued at $170 billion a year. 75% of our top 100 crops rely on insect pollination, and we've seen that ag reliance on insect pollinators has increased by like 300% in the last 50 years, and crop yields are enhanced by up to 75% through insect pollination. So insect pollinators are very important to our food system, and bees play a huge portion of that. So some threats to bees, we have habitat loss, degradation, fragmentation, so non-native species and diseases, pesticides, and even climate change. We've seen that a lot of these native areas with good pollinator plants and good places to forage are kind of dwindling for our bees. All right, so when a lot of people think of bees, they tend to think of honeybees. Well, honeybees are not native to the United States. However, they are here now, and domesticated honeybees are very important. But the US does have over 4,000 native bee species. And this includes, we have bumblebees, sweat bees, leafcutter bees, mason bees, and all different kinds. So the main difference between these types of bees and honeybees are that the majority of them are solitary bees. Now, bumblebees are also a social bee, but their colony structure runs a little different than honeybees as well. But these solitary bees tend to be more efficient pollinators than honeybees. The way that their bodies are set, they're just furry all over, and all the pollen just sticks to their entire body. And so it pollinates really effectively, whereas honeybees store all their pollen into little balls, so it doesn't pass on as easily. And another fun fact, that of solitary bees, only females sting, and most species are reluctant to do so, because if a bee stings you, the stinger gets caught in the skin and it rips their abdomen apart whenever they try to separate. So I do have a little video that will talk about solitary bees and kind of go a little bit more in depth to what I just said there.
Did you know that there are over 4,000 different bee species in North America? Most of these are gentle, solitary bees that nest in the ground or in tunnels. I'm Rebecca.
And I'm Emily.
And today we're going to talk to you a little bit about a very special group of native bees that include mason and leafcutter bees.
Mason bees and leafcutter bees are just a couple of examples. These easy to care for bees provide an indispensable service to the local ecosystems through pollination. Native to North America and from the family Megachilidae, these bees have an effective pollination rate of 95%. That means that 95 out of every 100 flowers each bee visits are pollinated properly to produce seeds and fruit. European honeybees, though monumentally vital, have a 5% effective pollination rate. Honeybees and other bees in the family Apidae carry pollen back to their nests in specialized structures on their back legs, commonly referred to as pollen baskets. Megachilid bees carry pollen back to their nest on their hairy bodies like Velcro. Mason bees have these hairs all over their bodies, while leafcutter bees carry pollen on their underbellies. Pollen carried in this way is more likely to stick to the stigma of the next flower the bee lands on.
Along with this high quality of work comes an innate, steadfast determination and work ethic. Mason and leafcutter bees are solitary. This means females must assume the roles of both queen and worker. Each female gathers nectar and pollen to feed her young. After returning to the nesting tunnel, she will groom pollen off her body and form it into a sticky ball with nectar. She will then lay an egg on the provisioned food and seal the compartment inside the tunnel with nesting material. She repeats this 5 to 6 times per tunnel. Mason bees use mud to seal off the compartment, while leafcutter bees use cutouts of leaves or flower petals. Leafcutter bees use their mandibles to cut circular pieces of plant material and carry it back to the nest. The eggs hatch and larvae consume the pollen ball. Then they pupate and emerge as adult bees in the following season. If weather permits, leafcutter bees can actually have multiple generations per season.
Solitary tunnel nesting bees have a dormant stage during the winter. For mason bees, this dormant phase is as an adult bee, enclosed within its cocoon. Once temperatures warm to about 50 degrees, they are ready to chew through their cocoons, mate, and begin foraging for their young. Mason bees are most active during the spring, which makes them champions of fruit tree pollination. If you have apple, cherry, pear, peach, or nut trees, mason bees can greatly increase your yields. They will also boost your berry production. Leafcutter bees have a special overwintering stage called a prepupa. They don't fully pupate until spring begins. Adult bees emerge much later in the season when temperatures exceed 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Adults specialize in pollinating alfalfa and summer vegetables like squash and peas. The foraging radii for most solitary bees is around 300 feet or 90 meters from their nest. This means that they tend to nest only in areas with abundant blooms in a relatively immediate vicinity.
Both of these bee species can cohabitate the same house, but will be active during different parts of the season. They will also require different sized nesting holes. Mason bees tend to do best with 8mm tunnels, while most leafcutter bee species prefer 6mm tunnels. To maximize species richness and diversity, provide a wide assortment of tunnel sizes. It is also a good idea to provide your bees with landmarks interspersed with the tubes to help females locate their tunnel. These bees are secondary tunnel nesters. That means rather than making their own holes to nest in, they actually inhabit natural reeds or holes abandoned by other animals or bees. For instance, an aggregation of mason bee nests moved into one of our top bar hives. The females use leftover comb as their nesting tunnels.
Once you begin this venture, your mason bee yields will increase year after year. If you do not harvest and give away excess cocoons, or sell them to a mason bee buyback program, you will want to provide more nesting tunnels every year to support the increased population. These bees are resourceful and they'll nest in about any hole they come across. If extra tunnels are not available, you may find they feel right at home in any nook, cranny, or crevice in your house exterior.
In most regions of North America, mason bee season begins between late February and early April, while leafcutter bee season begins in July to August. Check out weather patterns in your area to determine the best time to begin your gentle bee sanctuary. Thanks so much for watching. Stay tuned for our next video where we'll cover.
Okay. Awesome. So yeah, that video just kind of went a little more in depth about the native solitary bees. All right, so as they said in that video, for whenever bees nest, they need a good place to forage around them. So if you want to plant for native bees or pollinators in general, there are a few different tips that it's kind of important to follow. So first, you want a diversity in your plants and colors. You want multiple different types of plants with different types of colors because they will attract different kinds of bees. It's also important that on that same token is that you're planting year round. So you want different plants that will bloom at different times to kind of cater to those different busy times for the bees. And when looking for your native plants, you don't have to be super restrictive on considering native. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a Nebraska only plant because the bees that will get around here, they're more region specific. So you can look at kind of more plants that are native to the region that they will like. So I have a couple different links here. I'm going to take you to them so you can see them, and then at the end I can always post them in the comment box for people or leave this up. But so the first thing I'm going to go to is the Xerces. They have a specific, if I can get it clicked on 1 second. So they have a guide, and this one is for the Northern Plains region, which, as you can see up here, includes Nebraska. So it's going to talk a little bit about what are this specific region, what our specific region, what the different pollinator plants are, what the different species of native bees and pollinators, what they're going to be looking for. And as well down here, it's going to give you a very extensive list of different plants, when they bloom, what color they are, their needs, and it even has kind of a description about them. So I thought this guide was very helpful. Another thing that you can look at, so UNL has a pollinator habitat certification. I don't know currently if they're still doing them because of COVID, but you can still access their application online, which is a very good guide if you're wanting to build a pollinator-friendly garden or habitat. You can kind of see what some of their guidelines are in considering your habitat a pollinator habitat specifically. So it asks things here like your commitment to your plant diversity. It wants you to have a minimum of 5 different plants within these, what food source is this particular plant for which pollinator. So it's kind of, I feel like, a really good list, a good checklist that you can go through and see how your habitat kind of matches up and compares up. So let me get back to here. So now the fun part, habitat for native bees, which that first video talked a little bit about. So whenever you're wanting to make sure you have habitat just out in your yard, for solitary bees, there are ground nesting bees. And if you want to provide them somewhere, they just need bare soil, usually with some sort of cover, something to kind of help protect, so it's not just like plain bare for predators to get to them. And then there's cavity nesting, where, as they stated in the video, you have things like dead trees, plants with the hollow stems, the reeds, bee houses. All of those can be made for habitat for native bees, and you don't have to have a really strict bee hotel. You can just have some piles of some of your dead trees, some old plants, old plant stems, things like that, just kind of in a pile. But I do have another video that's going to talk a little bit more about some different bee hotel and bee house styles to give you a better rounded idea of what you can do before I go into my little mini demo. So we will play that.
Hi everyone, I'm Emily.
And I'm Rebecca, and now that you're familiar with solitary tunnel nesting bees, we can actually go over how to care for them yourselves.
And if you didn't catch our first video, make sure you watch that one first. First, you will need to pick a bee house and a place to hang it. Optimal location would be 6 to 7 feet off the ground, protected from weather, with south or southeastern sun exposure. Bees are ectothermic. This means they do not regulate their body temperature the same way that we do. In order to fly, their temperatures must reach about 90 degrees Fahrenheit. They can do this by warming in the sun or by vigorously vibrating their flight muscles. Morning sun exposure will allow them to start foraging earlier in the day without needing to expend extra energy. We recommend hanging your nest under the eaves of your house. If this is not an option, choose a house design that provides adequate shelter from the elements on its own. These can be hung somewhere like a tree or a fence post. Bee houses range from simple PVC pipes to expertly designed wooden or ceramic enclosures of varying shapes.
Next, you'll need to equip your bee house with nesting tubes or trays. Many people use solid wooden houses with drilled holes for nesting. This type of habitat does not allow cocoons to be harvested, and there tends to be significant buildup of debris and disease in the holes after being used for multiple seasons. We recommend selecting nesting tubes or blocks that can be opened. Harvesting, cleaning, and storing your cocoons at the end of the season is the best way to ensure bee health and populations for the next year. A variety of nesting tubes can be used. Some options include natural reeds, cardboard tubes with or without a paper insert, or any rigid and breathable material like printer paper rolled around a pencil and fastened with tape. Providing tubes with a range of diameters is the best way to provide habitat for the widest range of native bees and beneficial wasp species. Once cocoons are harvested, however, tubes will need to be replaced. Alternatively, you can choose to provide your bees with wooden nesting trays. These are easily opened for cocoon harvest and can be cleaned and reused for years to come. Nesting blocks and tubes can be provided interchangeably and can be mixed and matched inside the enclosure.
Your next consideration will be forage and nesting materials. Make sure your bees have everything they need within their 300-foot foraging radius. When adding bee forage to your habitat, keep in mind that the best plants are native plants. Native bees have spent hundreds of thousands of years co-evolving with native plants. Thus, they are best at collecting pollen and nectar from these types of flowers. These bees are generalist foragers, meaning they gather nectar and pollen from many types of flowers. Make sure you provide a variety of plants with staggered blooming periods. This will ensure they have forage throughout the season. Lastly, we recommend avoiding hybrid plants. These tend to produce less nectar and pollen and will not provide a good quality diet for your bees. Visit local nurseries and check out the plant list from Xerces Society to find out the best plants for your area and what will work for native pollinators in your neck of the woods.
Next, you'll need to make sure your bees have adequate nesting materials available to seal up development chambers within the tubes. Mason bees require mud with a heavy clay texture. If this is not naturally occurring in your area, you can purchase dry clay mud, mix it, and put it out for your bees. They are sensitive to the moisture level of the mud, so be sure to water it frequently. Leafcutter bees require leafy or petal material to cut and bring back to the nest. They seem to prefer pea plants, roses, lilacs, and dahlias.
The next step is to get bees. You can purchase cocoons for blue orchard mason bees and alfalfa leafcutter bees. These are among the most common species available through breeders and nurseries. We get our cocoons from crown bees in Seattle, Washington. Alternatively, you can attract local bees to your...
All right, I just wanted that for kind of that first part of the video. So that video just kind of shows the different kinds of bee houses and hotels that you can make, as well as if you want to take a very proactive role in your native bee population around you, you can, as they mentioned, harvest the bee cocoons, wash them, you store them in the fridge until temperatures are right, and then you put them out to then hatch, but that's definitely not a necessary step. Okay, I think that was all my slides. All right, so that's all the slides for this. So we'll go ahead and open the Q&A. So let me stop this here. Perfect, so you can start asking any questions through the Q&A, and I'm gonna go through a little mini bee house that I've been working on that you can make with things that you can just find around your house. So for my bee house itself, I have one of those little Pringle cans. So as you can see, it's about the size of my hand. As they said, you know, there's PVC pipes, wood. You can also use tin cans. You'll find people will take just a water bottle and cut off the end and use that as your base. So you can really get kind of creative with what you're gonna make your house out of. You definitely want something with a back so that the bees have an end to start their nesting. So I have already made a nice portion of my little tubes. I'll kind of show that. So see, I've already filled about half. Let me open up the chat. Are there any recommended websites? I don't have a specific recommended website on where to get those trays. I'm sure Amazon would be a good shot. You can also try and look into some of the different kind of local pollinator options and see if there's any organizations or shops that would have them as well. But I would put my bet that something like Amazon would have them, or maybe like a a lawn and garden store might not be a bad place to check. All right, where can you get a copy of the slides? I will have to talk to Amanda about how to make that available, but I can definitely have these somewhere where they are reachable and attainable. All right, so how I went about making my little tubes, as I showed in that one video, you can use little cardboard tubes, you could probably use like paper straws. I have an abundance of toilet paper rolls. And so how I've gone about in making my little nesting tubes is I literally would just cut the toilet paper roll in half. Perfect, so it looks like we can send out a copy of the slides to anyone who'd registered for this. So if I cut this in half, I found if I want to make a bigger, if I wanted to make kind of a bigger tube for one of the larger, like maybe a larger bee, just one whole half of this toilet paper tube. You literally, like they showed in that video, you just roll it up. I've got just normal like clear Scotch tape. And you see, I literally am just gonna tape it up. It's really easy and it's a really fun kind of summer project, especially while we're still sort of stuck at home. So you can see kind of a bigger tube. If I want to make some of the ones that are a little smaller, I would then take this half and cut it into half again. Let me see if I can. So Stacy, even though you might have a fear of bees and bugs, you can take a more hands-off approach to your bee house. So if you make one kind of like this, or in a way where the tubes can be replaced, you don't have to necessarily dissect your tubes every winter and harvest your bee cocoons, because I know to some that might be a little freaky. Just as long as every year or so you make sure to replace your tube so that no diseases or pests get built up in there. That way you could still help the bees without maybe being super hands-on with them. Okay. All right, so Leslie said they built a bee house and did, as I showed in the video, where you just drill the holes into your block of wood. Will the offspring come out next spring and summer? So to be completely honest with you, I'm not exactly sure when each of the offspring, going off what I know kind of the life cycle. I would think that it would be the next one is whenever they'll start to come out. What I have read and heard that's difficult with when you do the block, just a big block and drill the holes, is that while you can use it for multiple years, it can be really difficult to actually clean them out. And so it can become kind of a point of where pests and diseases build up, because it's just much harder than if you have those wooden trays. You can literally just take the tray apart and kind of clean in between the grooves. Okay. How long do the tubes need to be? So I've read that typically you want a good probably 5-6 inches ideally, because so what happens is when the bees are building up, you say this is the back end, the little mama bee will crawl all the way to the back, lay her egg with the food, and then build it up, and then she'll go back out and then she'll do the next one. And so she'll start from the back and go up. And so they usually, I've read they need about 5 to 6 inches so that they can really kind of build in their offspring. Okay. So it's the best time of year to replace the tubes from the previous year. I would think that you would want to do after, that's actually a really good question. And I don't want to give an answer if I'm not like 100% positive on a good answer. I would think after probably every, the beginning of every spring, but that might be something to look into a little better because I don't want you to kind of do bad practices because of me. Okay, let's see. All right, so in the chat, Paula asked, do you cover the 2 poles with mud or just leave a bowl out? Yeah, so you want to, if you're going to provide any materials for them, you'll just want to leave it out kind of off to the side because they'll go through and use the material their own and build their own nests. So, okay. So in the video, they mentioned 6mm to 8mm diameter tubes. Do we need any larger or smaller for native bees in Nebraska? From everything that I've kind of read, even for more Nebraska-based sources talking about this, the 6 and 8mm diameter tubes, that's pretty consistent from everything I've read in different locations. So something that is good instead of just only doing 6 or 8mm tubes is to have a variety of sizes all the way in between that so that you really are kind of tailoring to the different species and the different sizes. And yeah, the more of a variety of sizes you have, the more variety of bees that can move in. Sorry, trying to keep up with all the different chats. Okay, so should I start this now or wait until next spring? Is there a limit to how many bee homes you should have? And finally, what is a reputable company to get cocoons? So I would say you can really probably make a bee house whenever you get the inkling to do it. If it's a little late for bees to be out, it might be empty this year, but it'll be there if a bee needs it and for the next spring. As far as the limit, I don't think there is a limit. I do know, I have read, you want to be careful if you do have too many, because if you get a bunch of groupings of bee species, it makes a really good hotspot for predators. As well as you want to make sure that all the bees that are staying near you all have enough food to forage on within that, 300 kind of feet around where they're nesting. So if you have like a whole bunch of bee houses and not a lot of good foraging options, you might then kind of get some issues there. And as far as a reputable company for cocoons, I don't have one to give or recommend, but I would definitely be willing to do some research for you, Stacy, if you'd like. Okay, and where can you get native flowers here in Nebraska for the bees? Honestly, I know if you go and if you look at those lists, you can definitely just see the species, and a lot of them should be available just kind of at normal stores. But I do know that we have a lot of kind of local like nurseries and places that might be really good to check out to maybe find some more native pollinator plants for us. And then someone said that Amazon has houses with wooden trays, but they haven't found trays alone yet. Yeah, I can definitely, again, do a little more research onto that. Oh, we see someone said that. So Crown Bees has some of the reusable wood trays, and we posted a link in the chat, as well as Yeah, so the individual bee trays, and that's where in the video the girls got their materials from. So it'd be, yeah. Let me see, make sure I'm not missing anything in the chat. But yeah, so whenever you also make your little mini bee house at home, if you make something small and easy like this, you can put like strings on it and hang it. Although I've said, especially in a place like Nebraska where it's really windy, you really want to make sure to kind of have a secure spot for them. However you manage that, but somewhere where they're not kind of moving as much and are more durable against weather. Okay, so we used to get more bumblebees, but rarely see them. Is there a good way to attract more of them? Again, that's a question off the top of my head I don't have answers to, but I know that we have a lot of good resources. If you do some work or look into UNL, I know the Nebraska Game and Parks, the Outdoor Nebraska, their site has some kind of good insight into some of our native species, and you could try and find a couple native plants that are going to specifically kind of target bumblebees and be the food that bumblebees look for. Yep, so Deb said that Nebraska's statewide arboretum has native plants. So thank you for that, Deb. It's good for everyone to know. Sue said that she grows a number of native plants, cut them back in the spring, and leaves about 15 inches of the stems. Never had to purchase any bees. Yeah, so you have a very good natural habitat for them. So you have all of those natural nesting stems already in your yard, as well as all the food that they like. So you know, like I said, you don't need a bee house because you have yours naturally. So that's great, Sue. Do you have a resource for identifying bees? No, but I do know the Xerces, which is where I had that one pollinator plant guide. I know they have a lot of really good information, and I've seen some Nebraska specific articles, as well as UNL's sites. If you go and do a Google search about UNL bees, they have their entomology has some really great resources up as well. Let's see. But yeah, so then back over, sorry, I'll switch back over to the little, to this. So then once you get it all nice and filled, I have cinder blocks outside my apartment that have, you know, the little openings that I'm gonna put mine in. But, you know, on a tree, as they said in that video, underneath your awnings on your house are all good places. So Sue said that Heather Holm has a couple great books that are available on Amazon and probably local bookstores. As far as a suggestion about looking for books. I have a little book about bees too, but it's not an identification guide. So we have bees and identification and native plant forage guide. Yep, several publications about bees at Xerces. And the cool thing that I've seen about Xerces is that they do have a lot of specific information to Nebraska and native pollinators and our specific needs. So it's really nice to have kind of that source where to go through and look at. All right, do we have other questions? yeah, so now I'll have my own little bee house, and gonna put that out and work on get a couple good pollinator plants out there, and hopefully I'll have my own little mini bee population. But we will get the PowerPoint sent out to all registrants so that anybody who would like it has it available. If you ever have any other questions, or if you had a specific question I didn't have the answer to that you would like me to look more into, I am 100% willing to do that. So yeah, if you have any lingering questions like that, feel free to pop them here. Or you can send us a message on Facebook. You can always, Conservation Nebraska on Facebook, and I can always get a hold and help people through there. And again, another reminder, as y'all leave here, you will be sent a link for a really quick survey. It is very fast. I think it's only like 2 or 3 questions. So just please fill that out. Thank you so much for joining, Stacy, and everybody. I really appreciate everyone coming on to listen to me on this wonderful Wednesday evening. I know I had a good time. I hope you did. I'm just keeping an eye to make sure I get everybody. I'll leave just a couple more minutes for any last minute questions. Cool. Yes, thank you, Sue. Thank you, Meg. I'm glad you learned a lot, and I hope that you can have some fun and make your own little mini bee house too. Yes, thank you, everybody. Yep. Awesome. Well, it looks like we don't have any questions left. So again, we'll get the PowerPoint sent out, and just send us a message on Facebook if there is anything further that you would like to talk to me about on this topic. So yeah, thank you everybody, and I hope you have a good evening.